Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Reverence for Reverie. This is a space where the symbolic can become more sovereign and your interior world is given a little more room to breathe, hopefully. This week, I got something fun. We are traveling through the terrain of projection. And I'm not interested in exploring this in this capacity as pathology. Which is often how the field of psychology looks at it, but instead as the portal to your becoming. So if you're here, chances are that you've already felt the sting or maybe even the pull of seeing something in someone else that felt, let's say, felt charged, like there was something more behind it. So I'd like to start simple. Imagine an old school film projector. You know, they cast out light through a reel of images and they're projecting them onto the screen. The image actually appears out there on the screen, but the source actually lives internal. It's that reel on the inside with the light shining through it. It lives on the inside. That is projection, a psychic film reel of our inner life experiences that gets cast unconsciously onto the people, the situations, and the structures around us. And sometimes it's a wound. Sometimes it's a wish or a longing. And sometimes it's power that we haven't yet claimed within ourselves. But always, 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 it's information. So let's go ahead and unpack that. In classical psychoanalysis, projection is often framed as a defense mechanism. It's a way of disowning unacceptable feelings, thoughts, or impulses, and then safely locating them outside of the self and in someone else. And this is true. It is a way to defend ourselves against the things that we wish to not locate within us. But here's the thing. Defenses aren't just barriers. If we want to become more self-aware and let ourselves become more conscious of these defense mechanisms, we realize that they are also messages for us in disguise. In that way, I don't see projection just as a distortion. I see it also as an invitation because it reveals what we can't yet hold consciously within ourselves. And if we're willing, it then becomes a mirror with memory, a symbolic intelligence that reflects back to us what we're not yet ready to claim within ourselves. So let's say maybe you meet someone and you feel an immediate aversion. They are too much, too needy, too confident. Maybe they take up too much space. Maybe they're too slow. Or, that's one side of things. Let's think about conversely. Maybe you are instantly drawn in. They are magnetic, mysterious. You see them as powerful. In both cases, something in them is touching something in you. Something that's usually unintegrated, maybe it's just unexamined, and frankly, unloved within you. So you see, projection then becomes this map of our own unconscious terrain. And if we know how to read it, it becomes one of our greatest teachers. And while there are some people who use projection much more than others, the reality is everyone projects to some degree. It is human nature. I'd like to pause for a moment and just tell you a story. And this is not a clinical case per se, but it is a composite that echoes from many, many rooms that I've sat in, honestly, and including my own. So yeah, I think it might help sort of depict how this takes shape. Let's say a woman enters therapy after a series of failed relationships. She doesn't get it. Each time, the pattern is the exact same, and she is starting to see the pattern. She gives, they take. She becomes the emotional caretaker. She ends up depleted, resentful, confused. She begins to describe her most recent ex, saying, "He was so selfish. He was emotionally immature. He just couldn't ever show up for me." Now, as we explore this deeper, we realize that she had always seen herself as the strong one, the capable one, the grown up, the one who doesn't have needs. But here's the thing. Her ex's emotional immaturity, so-called immaturity, was holding something that she had actually exiled in herself, something that was being cast out of her. Her own unmet needs, her own desire to be held, maybe her own softness that never had a place to land. Maybe it was the wish to be taken care of, the wish to be able to be needy and let others make all of the fucking decisions. See, it's not entirely accurate that she was wrong about him, per se. The traits that she described certainly were there, but her projection was not actually about him. It was about her. She had projected her own inner child, the one that she had disowned, the one that she did not want to remember or be with, onto someone else outside of her. And she could safely locate that selfish, immature, needy child in him because the one inside her was not okay to sit with. And once we could begin to name that, the perspective began to shift. She could also begin to grieve for the child that was within her. All of the times that she had been left emotionally unfathered or unmothered, for all the ways that she had felt that she had to be the strong one when what she needed was actually a safe place to fall apart or to not have it all together. And you see that moment is the portal. When she could withdraw that projection, she gained more clarity. She could begin to see more clearly that yes, her ex was also a wounded child and had his own blind spots, but that he was responsible for attending to that part of him. This didn't make him bad. It made her more free to begin to choose differently for herself as she tended to the wounds that she had emotionally abandoned within herself. So again, to clarify, like, the selfishness and the emotional abandonment that she was feeling from him as though it were outside of her was simply a mirror to what she had already been doing within herself. This long-standing pattern echoing from the reaches of her earlier conditioning, when she could see that truth and begin to show up for herself in the ways that she really longed for someone to show up outside of her. Interestingly, the relationships she began to attract going forward began to shift as well. So what exactly does this mean for you, especially if you're someone who leads, creates, holds vision, or is the catalyst for others, has any measure of influence, small or large, in other people's lives? By the way, that would mean everyone, right? I'll talk specifically, though, to the leaders and the visionaries, because those are the people who are often attracted to my work. You become a very powerful projection screen. Your presence will activate admiration, envy, hope, fear, and so much more from others. People will see in you the parts of themselves that they crave or that they fear losing. And it's all unconscious, of course. If you're not aware of your own projections, you may unconsciously then perform for that approval of the other, approval that will never be won because it's about their own disapproval in themselves first. You might also shrink yourself to avoid their disapproval. And in doing so, you become smaller, you become more disconnected from your own purpose. And it's just really not a great place to be. So from my perspective, I've mentioned the word symbolic intelligence, and that means noticing these energetic dynamics, not just in a psychological kind of way, but in the spiritual, the bigger picture sort of view. Symbolism is the ways that we attune to any experience of life. Sometimes that's an external object. Sometimes that is these kinds of moments of projection where we can use them as the messenger. We can listen for the deeper undercurrent of meaning. And in that way, I don't see projection just as a defense. I also see it as a form of, maybe we would call it divination. And here's what I mean by that. So when someone triggers you, what if you ask, okay, what part of myself have I not made room for? What are they showing me about myself? When someone dazzles you, when you feel in awe of someone else, why don't you ask, what power am I locating in them that might already live inside me too? Or when you find yourself reacting, can you pause for a moment and ask, is this really about them? Or is this a rerun of some much older story? It does not mean that we excuse harmful behaviors. Like I mentioned in the above case example, it wasn't that she was wrong about her ex. It's true. She was attracting emotionally unavailable people into her life, and she was repeating these same patterns over and over and over again. But when she paused to find the actual meaning, to mine for that meaning from the reactions, she began to see more clearly. And in this way, we can mine the meaning of our own reactions because it's almost like reading a sacred text, that we don't just react from the projection, but we reveal more and more of ourselves through it, through the being with. So here's your invitation for the week. I'd like you to see if you can track a projection. And don't do it with judgment. Judgment is not helpful. Shame is not helpful in these situations, but instead approaching it with curiosity. Can you see it as an initiation into your next becoming, not as a flaw? Could you ask yourself, what is it that I'm seeing in the other that might be a messenger for something that's unlived, untapped in me? And let your projections be the portals. Let them teach you the language of your own unconscious mind. Let them remind you that you are never just seeing them. You are always, at some level, seeing you. And that, of course, is always where the real work begins. Thank you again for being here inside this field with me this week. If this has stirred something in you, I would really love to hear about it. I'd love to hear what projection you're working with this week. You can tag me on socials at iam.marissarhodes. You could share it via email, marissa@marissarhodes.com, or simply bring it into your journal space, write about it, be with it. That is always good enough. Please don't forget to subscribe to this show if you like what you're hearing, and leave a review if you don't mind. That really helps others access the show as well, and it helps to get my message out there. You could also sign up to get more of my riffs and reflections and reverie straight to your inbox by signing up to my email list, and all of that will be linked in the show notes. And remember, living symbolically is not about decoding every single thing, but it is about letting your life speak to you and choosing to listen. That's all for today. As always, let the reverie lead you, and I'll see you next time.